Hey, you know that feeling when you swing by your favorite spot for, I don't know, a snack, and suddenly it costs noticeably more?
Oh, yeah. Or you look at your bank balance after payday.
Exactly. And realize your usual spending power just isn't quite cutting it anymore. Like your paycheck suddenly shrunk.
That feeling, that sense of your money not stretching as far as it did maybe last year or even last month.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something pretty much everyone's noticing, I think.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, using your sources, trying to really understand inflation.
Right.
So simply put, it's, well, prices rising over time. Right?
Basically, yeah.
Think about it like this. Remember when that coffee you grabbed might have been, say, $1? Maybe not that long ago even.
Uh-huh.
Now, the same cup could easily be, what, $3? Maybe more, depending on where you are.
It certainly feels that way sometimes.
And that's inflation kind of chipping away at what each of your dollars can actually buy.
So the mission for this deep dive for us is to really get to grips with what inflation actually is. We'll look at, the reasons behind it.
The why.
Yeah, the why. And crucially, how it directly impacts your everyday financial life. We want to give you a solid handle on this economic force using the materials you've gathered without getting bogged down in super technical jargon.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit more, keeping your sources in mind. Inflation, as we said, it's a general increase in prices.
Across the board, yeah.
And that means a decrease in the purchasing power of your money. It's not just, avocados getting expensive one week.
No, it's broader than that.
It's a widespread trend. Think about your regular costs groceries. Seems like they're always going up.
Definitely. That's a big one people feel.
Filling up the car. That feels heavier on the wallet these days. And rent. Well, I imagine many of your sources probably point to housing costs as a major factor.
Rent or mortgages, yeah, those are usually significant parts of anyone's budget. And they're certainly feeling the pressure. You're seeing the real world effects there.
In those everyday transactions.
Exactly. And going back to that coffee example, the price jump isn't just the coffee shop owner waking up one day and deciding to charge more.
Yeah. Right. It's not arbitrary.
It reflects a bigger economic picture where the value of each dollar you hold has effectively gone down a bit.
Yeah.
It buys less coffee.
And looking at some of the historical data, like maybe charts showing U.S. inflation over the decades that might have been in your sources, this isn't a totally new problem, is it?
Not at all. That's a really crucial point. Seeing inflation over, say, the last 50 years shows it's kind of an ongoing economic feature.
Right. It waxes and wanes.
Exactly. The rate changes, sometimes dramatically, but the phenomenon itself isn't new. It gives you perspective, shows it's not just some isolated thing happening right now.
It helps understand the context, doesn't it? That this is something economies grapple with over time.
Precisely. It's about grasping the historical trends that shape the current moment, not just reacting to today's prices.
Okay, so we've got a better handle on the what. But what about the why? What are the main things driving these price increases, according to your sources?
Well, based on standard economics, which your sources likely cover, one key driver is something called demand pull inflation.
Demand pull, okay.
Yeah. So picture this. Maybe there's a sudden surge in popularity for a product. Or maybe people just generally have more money to spend, perhaps from stimulus or wage growth, and they want to buy more stuff than is currently available. If companies can't ramp up production fast enough to meet all that extra demand,
then they can charge more, right? Because people are willing to pay it.
Exactly. It's basically too much money chasing too few goods. That demand pulls the prices up.
That makes sense. Like concert tickets for a huge artist, right? Limited seats, massive demand, prices shoot up.
That's a perfect analogy, yeah. Very similar dynamic.
Okay, so that's one cause. What else?
Another big one your sources probably talk about is cost push inflation.
Cost push. Okay, it's the opposite side.
Kind of. This happens when it becomes more expensive for businesses to actually make their products or offer their services.
Okay. Like raw materials?
Exactly. Think about the price of oil going up, or metals, or even wages for workers. If a company's costs rise significantly,
they're going to try and pass that on to us, the consumers.
Usually, yes. They push those higher costs onto you through higher prices to protect their own profit margins.
So if oil gets pricier, it's not just gas at the pump.
No, it ripples through.
It's the cost of transporting everything, making plastics, all sorts of things. So lots of prices could go up.
Precisely. It has a wide impact. And then there's a third key element your sources might touch on, the money supply.
Right, the amount of money actually circulating in the economy.
Yeah. If a government or more accurately, the central bank, increases the amount of money in circulation significantly, maybe by, printing more money or through other mechanisms. But the amount of goods and services available to buy doesn't increase at the same pace.
Then you've got more dollars chasing the same amount of stuff again. Kind of like demand pull, but driven by money quantity.
It's related, yes. That excess money can essentially devalue the currency. Each dollar's worth a little less.
Like having more raffle tickets for the same number of prizes, each ticket's chance goes down.
Good way to put it. This abundance of money relative to goods and services can drive prices upward.
I think I've seen visuals for this stuff. Maybe your sources had something like animated arrows showing supply and demand shifting.
Very possibly. Or maybe something showing how more money entering the system can dilute the value of each existing dollar.
Yeah, those visual things can really help make these abstract economic ideas feel a bit more real.
They definitely can, because these forces, demand pull, cost push, money supply, they can feel a bit intangible until you see how they play out.
Okay, so we get the what's and the why. Now let's really bring it home. Back to the listener, back to you. How does this stuff, rising prices, money being worth less, actually hit your personal finances day to day?
Right, this is where it becomes very, very real for people. You feel it most directly in your regular recurring expenses.
The must-haves.
Exactly. Things like your rent or mortgage payment, the amount you spend each week at the grocery store, the cost to fill up your car, all these things tend to creep up, sometimes jump up because of inflation.
And even if each increase seems small on its own,
they add up. Over a month, over a year, it could put a real strain on your budget.
And it's not just the price tags changing, is it? It's about what your income actually buys. You mentioned purchasing power before. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. So purchasing power is basically how much stuff, goods, and services you can buy with a certain amount of money. Let's say your salary stays exactly the same this year as last year.
Okay.
But if the prices of everything you need to buy, food, housing, transport, maybe things you track in your spending records go up because of inflation,
then that same salary buys less.
Precisely. Your purchasing power has decreased. You're earning the same nominal amount, but it doesn't stretch as far.
That image you sometimes see, like a piggy bank getting thinner or a dollar bill shrinking, that kind of captures it, doesn't it?
It really does. It visualizes how the real value of your money is eroding, even if the number on your paycheck hasn't changed.
And that can be worrying, realizing that even if you're doing okay income-wise, you might be getting worse off financially just because costs are rising faster.
That's a really critical takeaway about inflation's personal impact. It can genuinely lower your standard of living if your income doesn't keep pace with price increases.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the downsides, the squeeze on the wallet, but I think one of your sources might have hinted that inflation isn't always 100% bad news. Is that right? Is there any potential upside?
That's a really sharp question, and yeah, it's important to get the nuances here. While high inflation, runaway inflation, is definitely harmful.
Right, we've established that.
A small, stable, and predictable amount of inflation is actually generally seen as healthy for an economy.
Really? Like zero inflation isn't the goal?
Not usually, no. Most economists and central banks, like the Fed in the US, often aim for a modest inflation rate, maybe around 2% per year. Your sources might have mentioned that specific target.
2%. Why? Why is a little bit of inflation considered okay or even good?
Well, a mild level of inflation can actually encourage people and businesses to spend and invest rather than just hoard cash.
How so?
If you expect prices to be slightly higher next year, you have a small incentive to buy that thing you need or make that investment now rather than later when your cash might be worth slightly less in real terms.
Ah, okay. So it stops money from just stagnating. It keeps it flowing.
Exactly. It provides a gentle nudge for economic activity. It encourages investment, which can lead to growth, job creation, that sort of thing.
So a little bit is like greasing the wheels of the economy.
That's a good way to think about it. And this is but your sources likely stress the key word is mild.
Right. Not the rapid stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Excessive inflation, high inflation, that's where the serious problems kick in.
Yeah.
It creates uncertainty. Well, it makes it hard for businesses to plan. It can lead central banks to raise interest rates sharply to try and cool things down.
Which makes borrowing more expensive for everyone.
Right. For mortgages, for business loans, and it can cause instability in financial markets.
Yeah.
Plus, as we've discussed, it puts significant financial stress on individuals and families, especially those on fixed incomes.
So it really is a balancing act. Too little inflation, maybe the economy is sluggish. too much and you get instability and hardship.
Precisely. I would be surprised if one of your sources used a visual, like a balance scale, maybe.
Yeah, possibly showing inflation on one side and maybe deflation or recession on the other.
Something like that, yeah. Highlighting that need for equilibrium. Managing inflation effectively is about trying to stay in that sweet spot, promoting growth without letting prices spiral out of control.
That broader picture is really helpful.
Yep.
Okay, but let's shift back to the practical. What can you, the listener, actually do about it? When prices are rising, what steps can you take to manage your finances based on any advice in your sources?
Right, because while you can't personally control, global oil prices or the national money supply.
Unfortunately.
Right. But there are definitely proactive things you can do to navigate your own situation better during inflationary times. One of the absolute basics, probably mentioned in your materials, is to budget smarter.
Get a handle on where the money's actually going.
Exactly. Track your spending. See what's essential, what's maybe discretionary. Then look for areas where you might be able to cut back, even just a little, or find cheaper alternatives.
Makes sense. Know your numbers first. What else?
Another key strategy often recommended is to invest wisely. Now, this comes with caveats, of course.
Sure, investing has risks.
Always. Yeah. But historically, over the long term, certain assets like, say, stocks or real estate have often tended to provide returns that outpace inflation.
So the idea is that while cash might lose purchasing power sitting in a bank account,
Especially a low-interest one, yeah.
investments have the potential to grow faster than prices are rising.
That's the potential, yes. It's about aiming to preserve or even increase your real wealth over time. But again, your sources likely stress doing research or getting advice.
Definitely. Not just jumping in blindly. It needs to fit your own situation, your goals, how much risk you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. It's very personal. Another thing, more of a long-term play perhaps, is focusing on building your skills.
How does that help with inflation specifically?
Well, enhancing your professional skills, maybe getting certifications, learning new things relevant to your field. That can increase your earning potential over time.
Right. Higher income gives you more of a buffer against rising costs.
Exactly. If you can increase your income, ideally faster than inflation, you're better positioned to handle those higher prices. It boosts your financial resilience.
That's quite empowering, actually, investing in yourself.
It really is. And one last crucial thing your sources probably highlight: stay informed.
Keep up with what's happening in the economy.
Yeah. Understand the trends. Pay attention to reports on inflation, interest rates, things like that. Being aware helps you anticipate potential changes and maybe adjust your own financial plans or spending habits proactively.
Maybe your sources even had little icons, like light bulbs, next to these tips.
Possibly. Yeah. Visual cues to make the advice stick.
Yeah. So it sounds like the overall message is you can't stop the inflation wave, maybe, but you can learn to surf it better.
That's a great way to put it. It's about taking control where you can. Smart budgeting, considering investments carefully, boosting your skills, and just staying aware.
So inflation, it's definitely this big, pervasive economic thing. It touches everyone's life, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just some abstract number in a government report.
No, it's right there when you're paying for groceries, filling the tank, figuring out rent or the mortgage. It's real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But hopefully, by taking this deep dive, by understanding a bit more about what it is, what causes it, how it affects you.
You feel a bit less helpless about it.
Exactly. You gain a greater sense of understanding, maybe even a bit of control in how you manage your own financial life. It shifts from being this mysterious outside force to something you can actually analyze and respond to.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
In this case, definitely.
Okay, so thinking about everything we've discussed, different drivers like demand pull and cost push, the money supply factor, the advice from your sources, here's something to maybe mull over after listening. What specific sectors of the economy do you think might be most vulnerable in the current inflationary environment? And perhaps what could be some of the less obvious, maybe longer-term consequences for individuals beyond just the immediate sticker shock? Definitely some food for thought there.